Okay, this is much better. Okay, let's go at this. This is WNDC, WNDC, NDC. WNDC stands for We in the Crib and You Ain't. NDC stands for We in the Crib. And I'm working on several formats right now, trying to test and see if this whole little setup works. How it sounds, and if I can actually reach out and, you know, try to get this whole interweb stuff down enough that, people can give me a better reply as to how, all of this sounds and whatnot. And for that reason, let's get into this whole thing now. Here I am sitting here at the sharper end of about to be 60 years old. Not that I'm Russian, but I'm black. And I'm bliggity black. And this is Black History Month. And it's almost over. And in the process of it, here on a Friday, I'm just trying to get this out and see if this will entertain, inform, or enlighten anyone. Just on the mindset of where I'm at with this whole thing. So work with me here. It's 2021. We got all of these other little things going on in our lives right now. Hey, and hey, Jenny. Yeah. And I'm sitting here, and I left up in the little title over there. I didn't do it over here. This video about this documentary about small little town in rural Atlanta area, the ATL area. Back when we're talking in the 50s, I realized that at this point in time in what we call this Black History Month, considering how everyone was a lot more clueless as to why all of a sudden Black lives mattered so much this time last year, that in tribute, I'm hoping that I can actually inform and entertain, if nothing else. But so feel free to hit my Cash App. I think I got it somewhere around there, because this whole COVID thing for people in my industry means that we rather sit or we cash out and go work for Walmart. And that's a kind of humorous kind of reality of where this year, this time in our Black history, it's not so much about having to learn the people that we didn't get taught in school, but how to learn how each and every one of us, are at a point where not only do we matter, but if more of us from every other diaspora of what we call Americans, mattered at a better level all around the board, this country would be past great. Again, when the last time the people remember what they thought was a country great was during a time when we had such an influence of other people who came to this country with the desire of fighting for this country. The only other place that they did that kind of stuff during that era was like in France, and all they got is a foreign legion out of it. We ended up with patriots. Not the same thing, but You know, I'm not too hip about eating cake. You know, that's a French joke. So we go back to 1950, you know, and for a lot of people, the reason why I'm saying that is because I'm really believing that there's not as many people left at this era in this kind of shape enough that I'm 1 year away from being another generation, you know, so I'm on the back end of the boomers. You know, too old to be, you know, Gen X, Gen Y, or Gen Z, you know, but young enough to not necessarily have to be in the crowd with most boomers who were living and loving, you know, from the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. All tell you, you know, if you actually were back there in that day, you don't remember, you know, and they mean it, you know, for a lot of them. And you can see it in their culture with a lot of people that, you know, wouldn't be that comfortable with being told, you know, oh, shut up, boomer. And yet for people like these millennials and everyone else, this whole enlightenment of what is most important, to just sit back and think about it from a perspective of someone who's just not really trying to tell you one thing or anything, but when somebody finds this moment where they start to scream out, you know, what happened? How did this happen? Why are we in such a disarray on all planes, culturally speaking, in this country? Even though we're still, you know, moving along in this country, you know, it seems like, you know, we're really sucking at being a country right now, culturally speaking. And yet, you know, yeah, there you go, Jenny. You know, 1946 to 1964, technically speaking, you know, but I'm in 63, so I'm right there on the butt end of a boomer. And I can't really say that I'm one of the other people because that vast amount of time is still too past. You have to go through the whole gamut. And, you know, and if, you know, the boomer era was recorded in such an amount of area, I couldn't really result with some of the people on the back end of Gen X or Gen Y or Gen Z because I really lived the boomer life in the boomer day. And that's where a lot of what I, you know, that I'm, you know, that I've put out here, the share on the video and everything is really all about too. So follow me now if you can. You know, we all lived a really simple life not so long ago. And while that was occurring, there was this massive amount of technology, culture, and change that has happened in such a small amount of time that one of the biggest discomforts that we have here as people on this planet is that we have more legal adults of so many generations all in there that it's like the Tower of Babylon and the possibility of relating or communicating because, you know, millennials just can't see the logic that they feel and them because they're like, yeah. And I guess you're going to tell us about the story of when you had to walk to school in the snow, uphill, both ways. Yeah, whatever. And you're going, okay. It's deeper than that because in a lot of ways, when we want to look back at a lot of the things and the people that we want to be angry with for having subjected us to still being dealing with some stuff that they should have dealt with, you know, back in their era and their parents' era and their parents' era, you know, really doesn't apply. You know, I think that as Americans, we are more blessed with the things that haven't gone right yet than the things that we think that we've made great enough that everybody has got a fair share of it. And that's okay. You know, overall, I mean, if you think about it, the perspective here we're going into a whole new age, literally. And there were people and mystics before, all of this technology that we think we know and this history we think we know, that had an idea that there was something that was going to be happening as the world turned during this very age that we're living in right now today. And a lot of us will never be remembered in this newfound history for how we've gotten here in our elder state, unless you just happen to be, willing to have been one of those martyrs or whatever. And we really honestly need to sit back and look through the eyes of the people that made the people that we are, and realize that genetically, none of us are like them. I'm one of the last generations or two left that have the vaccination mark, and then they have the inoculation kind of thing with the air gun thing, makes a little smiley thing, and then people start just getting shots and boosters every now and then, and they have no memory of how you had to heal from, all of this stuff that they shot in your arm, in order to make you more capable of being able to be healthy, as the world is turning into some other things. And, people give the medical and mental practice too much credit, being that they all came from BDSM. Now, I like to reverse that and say that again, because I know that sounds deep, but it's too deep for too many people, because this is the first time in the Earth's history that too many people have been offered, allowed, and, bequeathed too much information for them to actually try to catch up like little tomatoes. And I take fault in being just as human as quite a few people, although I've lived a life where I haven't been capable of affording the simplicity of living in little town USA on a daily enough basis that, it's just the way it is here, and just keep the peace. Don't you go over there, boy. I ain't live that kind of thing. And so, but I remember traveling back when a lot of people didn't even travel, when people didn't believe that. I remember getting kicked out of school because my teacher looked at my little black ass from the ghetto and said, there ain't no way in the world you gonna tell me that you was on a damn airplane and you done been from coast to coast in this little time that we had our little break. You get your lying butt out of my classroom and out of my school, and don't you come back unless you bring your parents. And I went home, and my pops and them was sitting there, and they was like, what the hell are you doing home? Ain't you supposed to be in school? And I was like, yep. And school told me to take my butt home, and if I want to go back, then I got to bring y'all. And instantly they get up from everything else that they doing, cussing and fussing, and we walk back to the school, and we walk back to the class that I was in. And and my pops and them walked up to the teacher, was like, hey, why you send my kid home by himself at the middle of the day, blah, 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 blah. We doggone sent this doggone child to school so that we could get stuff working and this, that, and the other with his little hyperactive butt at home. You supposed to, it's your turn. What the hell is the problem? He said he was on a plane. He said that he was over here in this city, and then he went over here and this, and it was like, ma'am, yes, we did. Yes, he did. He said, I can't even understand why you so dim with this, because the reality was I had the child's collectible Pan Am little blue collector thing that you can only buy on the plane, and boy, getting on or getting off. And it was a rare collectible item, but the biggest thing was that, the little bag didn't even phase her, because she was so ignorant of the whole flying experience, the whole airline experience, but she had no idea what Pan Am meant or why I would have this brand new little blue pocketbook bag up there, smiling and grinning with my ghetto smart sadistic butt, who happened to be tested and found to be on a 5th and 7th grade level reading and math in kindergarten. And I'm getting kicked out of school because I was one of those kids that were living and breathing at the time that people could only imagine when they watch little shows like Judas, and The Great Messiah and whatnot, and be here living to actually be able to explain that. And yet past a couple of Gen X's and Y's, at this point, they're looking at you and they're going, man, I can't see you in that part. I can't see you being the little kid of Fred Hampton or one of them. I can't see you being one of those kind of people. I can't see you being smart enough to even think about what's going on. I just watched the news where they had this little kid that was so bright that he's like now doing astrophysics or some other stuff. He was reading at 6 months. Now people are going, 6 months. I'm going, well, I wasn't that doggone great, but I was walking and talking at 6 months and I was reading at 1. Now that might seem like, come on, man, you all of that and black. We're on Black History Month right now. And that is the very instinct that needs to be respected, because it's an instinctual thing at the point that we're at right now. People can't even watch Black exploitation and take in the vision of, it wasn't just the way that they looked and the outfits they were in. It's the mere fact that back in that day, they didn't have deodorant. These people, that polyester didn't come totally clean. Back in the day when pantyhose would only soil was the only reason why a woman would throw away those doggone indestructible pantyhose they used to put out on the line all the time, And, while these things might seem something like, yeah, to whatever, but if you're watching that video that I also put out there and you literally just take it in just like any other movie, and I want you to consider how the people accidentally found some kind of input on actually creating all of us. They didn't mean to do that. More than 60% of the population on this planet was not planned. And yet here we are on the back end of Black History Month. And this reason for having it is not so much because we need to wake up all the Black folks to do this, but because there's a lot of other people who dig themselves some Black folks, but still can't quite get whatever it is that they need to get with the certain few Black folks that they do admire to a certain level higher than themselves. And they're race enough to cross those borderlines willfully. And we're trying to not bring up the whole Black Lives Matter or this, that, and the other or whatnot. But a year ago, it got so deep that this doggone COVID stuff almost became a blessing to a lot of people just because they can't keep being out in the street screaming, and your ancestors are messed up and you people are inheriting it and this, that, and the other. And they're sitting back there just as ignorant, going, man, why you stop doggone blaming me for this, that, and the other? I wasn't this, that, and the other. And they're right, because we as people of color have the inability to be able to identify the difference between people who were slave masters and the other doggone people who were out there just going out there in the field and the whole nine too. That's why Lyndon B. Johnson came out with that. All you have to do is make them feel that they're just a little bit above Negroes, and you can get them to do anything. And they'll never even complain, even when you're picking their pockets. And we're sitting here not even understanding how relevant the actuality was that at this point last year, we were all about the Black Lives Matter. Oops, somebody had chewed. And nobody had any idea that this whole patriot thing would overcome just the now I'm a Black Lives Matter patriot thing, and I'm a Republican or Democrat or this, that, the other, so and so, because you're in a cultural area where it's good for you to be that way with them, but most of these people who believe this aren't the kind of people who are the same kind of person when they travel all over the rest of the world, and attract the same level of metaphysics all around the world. They make a lot of sense, somewhere, but they don't nowhere else. And a lot of that is due to the mere fact that, well, if you think that's bad, look what you've done to your black folks. And when they say, well, black folks matter or this, that, and other, it's because, while we still dealing with our post-traumatic slave syndrome that Dr. Joyce DeGraw, identified, the reality of this is that, until we can allow the greatness in our country to believe that they're great enough to be the best that they can be without boundaries, we can't blow up like we're supposed to all over the place. There's room enough for all of us to make more money than everybody else in the world. Except that we have gotten to a point where we are now trained and conditioned to believe that we deserve our God-given right to sit on our doggone lazy boy and not be as significant anywhere past our county, if not just across the tracks or whatnot, and whatever it is, other people. And that's not profitable anymore, even though this country paints and prints its own money. It's not worth anything unless we are passing more of it through our own hands to others and making it work for us, because this is a whole big investment. And this investment has been stipulated in our federal government to the point where they can get rid of a lot of doggone, oh man, Columbus Day is about to get gone, all this other stuff. But Black History Month is the only undefined mandatory stipulation that the federal government itself is like, you know what? We've been saying this stuff way back since Carter G. Woodson come down here and told us why and where we probably would end up 20, 40, 100 years from then if we don't. And made it agreeable enough to the people who were aware that we're going to probably last this long, and most people were just trying to get through, the locust season. And it's hard for Americans to understand that you were never made and intended to just be you somewhere. You were all made and intended to be so brilliant and bright of a representative of the citizenship and ownership of what we have here as this glorified concept that has no race, has no creed, has no color, and yet here we are. We're not Iran or Iraq or France or, Cambodia. We're not. And yet we're still many other things without the many other things that are still right there, that hopefully this might be the one subject on Black history and culture and whatnot that could assist others could possibly assist others if they just stop with their other logic and stay in their lane and do your basics on this, because it's not a complicated conundrum, but it's too simple for you to instinctively be able to do it. It's like you can't put one foot in front of the other until you figure out which foot is keeping your balance. And we have no balance. And the reason why we have no balance is because every February we lack the ability of taking it more serious that Black Lives Matter. You know, even if not all of them matter like that, there are a whole lot more of them that are possibly worth a whole lot more than most of the other people you think should get a better break in this country. And that's how it started, and that's how it's been, and that's how it's still always going to be. And when you look around, everybody who brought a race is now more brown than the race that they left. And that's what makes us great again, is for us to understand that we've got an issue, because while it sucks to be you, it even sucks more for a lot of us who are the franchise of this country. The franchise, because they are taught to just think it's the white man. It's the white man. They don't know rednecks and hillbillies and high bloods and white trash and, you know, and all the other idiosyncrasies that exist in a culture that we don't even live with, man. I don't even like that doggone. I don't eat pork, so I'm not going to hang out with you at the doggone. No, I'm just, you know, no offense. But I don't want to, you know, to hold on to a historic culture, no matter where it came from Africa or from, you know, Alabama. I don't want it, you know, because technically speaking, wherever it was is not where we at right now. And I'll be damned if I had to go back and explain to Pharaoh or whoever else why the hell I'm not feeling going and building his damn, you know, pyramids without straw. This ain't that kind of day. I'm in a union, you know, and we have to start realizing that we need more unions. And I don't mean unions just like, oh, labor unions, they're going to make it up and this and that. I mean, we need more unions, more people that are really down for helping everybody who believes in that same reality enough to make it fair for everybody in that craft. And everything that we do past just live, breathe, and eat is a craft. And the better you like it, the better you treat it. And we've got a lot of people who are feeling really depressed and down and unproductive and whatnot because they can't understand how important it is for them to be a part of a craft, because you got it. It's not just cheese. So here it is. Here I am, you know, running out of beer here in DC. No problem. Liquor store down the street. Play my numbers in a minute. But this is almost the end of Black History Month. And not that it really means that much for anyone else, but wasting a whole month. That the last time that they wasted a whole month and we let them, we ended up with January 6th. What do you want to bet? If you thought 2020 was something, wait until you see 2022. If you don't get with what we need to get with before the end of the month. Now, I'm hoping that some of this finds you well. But I'm hoping that this also allows you the ability of sitting back and looking at everything, all your logic, but make it a cartoon. I mean, past Looney Tune, you can make it anime, you can go anywhere you want to, but make it a cartoon and look at it in your mind's eye in that manner, you know, and realizing that unlike us today, you know, they had so few resources. that people were finding old newspapers and they would get upset again on something that was actually fixed years later, but it's the, the best edition that they got. People who really honestly are believing something that, is an outdated expression of it. Give you a good example. I used to try to audit classes over at the Morehouse, Clark AU in Atlanta, skip high school and just go out there and hang out with them. And I remember I was in a class that was one of the first new Black history curriculums that they started to teach, brand new books. And I'm sitting up in there acting like I'm some other dude. So, they don't find out that I'm actually cutting class in high school. And I'm up in there, mucking with the professor. But he went on this doggone thing and talking about how the struggle was from the late 50s to the early 70s, mid 70s, and it was so absolutely wrong that it was even spoken wrong. And what made it more frustrating for me was that I looked around and I was the only one in that room that wasn't paying an astrological amount of money to listen to this dude explain what the civil rights movement was to such a degree that it totally conflicts with the movie Judas and the Great Messiah. And it's speaking of that same era. And I'm like, OMG. And they're still teaching out of that same freaking book. And there are people who are going to have to pay for decades for that doggone requirement as people of color, especially. And yet, it's not just them that this is for. This is for the other people who really just don't get you. I just don't get you. Hafiz, I don't get you. And you're going, yeah, I agree. Because I'm talking in colors and you can only see in text. And that's okay. But I can't tell you, look, I don't want you to think that I'm talking to you like you're retarded. But that's okay. Bless your little heart. And that's a real awkward thing when you think about what I'm saying here. Because we've got a lot of work to do on the esteem of all of our people right now. All of our people who have, been thinking that, oh man, that's your problem. That's this and that, that are now in a state of, God dang it, I hate all of this. Where is it coming from? This, that, and the other. You're going, dude, I'm with you. No, you ain't. You can't be with me. Look at you. Look at me. And already our kids are coming into this doggone. They're coming in hot. They're coming in hot enough that there are more of them that are jumping from the cradle to college. And they're coming out of there, dookie and housering all over here in the whole nine. And there's no way of stopping them. It's their thing now. And they're blowing people out of the water. And half of the problem we got in our society today, clearly across the board, is just the mere fact that 98% of generation boomers were never expected to be healthy, alive, and working at this age and point in their life, without even considering that we're going to have Gen X and Gen Y and Gen Z, and then all these other doggone little hybrids. And it's at a point now that even Nostradamus couldn't figure out that what made him crazy when he talked about this very era was the mere fact that he had no idea how Facebook, he had no idea of how video killed the radio star. He had no idea how we would all live supporting a freedom to have a one-to-one direct basis of connection to any and everybody all around the planet without it becoming an international problem, not my daughter, and this is Black History Month still. The pandemic version or edition. And, we've got a person of color again in the Oval. And this one up there also has the same senatorial obligations on the side. Kind of like chess. It was great to have a king me. Obama, king me. But we got Kamala, and while it might not seem much on that game of chess, that is very useful enough to understand that's a queen. Oh, what better queen did you ever could possibly put than Kamala? Why? Because it's not you or us or this, that, and the other, but she's the typical example of the same thing white folks say they proud of. I came from immigrants and this, that, and the other, and so and so. We came here and we worked hard and we took a lot of things. And yeah, I might not have been so socially, this, that, and the other, but I made it and I got a good heart and I'm here now. And, let's do this. And I believe God bless America and nowhere else, and while it's not good enough for everybody else who thinks that they have a say, this Black History Month is as important as the need for people to be less in the shock value of people of color being of importance in what you believe to be, you're proud to be American. And for a lot of people, it really does hurt to see so many of them really want to say something or lash out at people of color and end up with a hate crime or end up on a no-fly list and losing their doggone passport and not even realizing how, a smack on the hand at that level can actually just, neglect your traveling rights for the rest of your life. What kind of country is this? It's the one that we made together. And many of y'all ain't been in on this game all the way back to Christmas addicts. You can't have bragging rights on fought for this country because he was the first person to die and shed blood for what we know as that. And yet, this is Black History Month. It's almost over. And there needs to be something that more people need to get this year from this subject so that we have a better chance of coming back to this next year and a better state of the union. And I'm almost out of beer. And you're almost out of time. You're almost out of time of doing something with this Black History Month. It's never been done before. And consider the mere reason that if it's gotten that bad, that we did the same thing last year, and look what it turned out. We had back-to-back Black Lives Matter, and you still got a lot more coming. Trust and believe. But it happened at such an awkward time for such a large amount of people who really didn't care at all about Black people's problems or history or why they're even valid, and why we got to listen to them or hear them. And that birthed so many Karens and patriots and whatnot, that some of them really don't deserve what they're going to get, just due to the mere fact that, a lot of this is a mental health issue. It's all a mental health issue, not because of their mind being dysfunctional, but because their society is so dysfunctional in itself that each and every person's mental protection in their area, because, I'm in Knoxville, I'm in Tupelo, I'm in Boston. I can't be getting into this, that, and the other. I got to still deal with going past doggone Benny, and he's always running at me because he's doggone Italian and I'm fucking Irish. And all of those people, past people who just decided to just be white, are all interconnected to how they were interconnected with people of color. And yet, we're the trump card. And everybody else has been buying a whole deck of and this is not an argument on politics. This is a reality that this is our country. And these are our people. And WNDC stands for We in the Crib and You Ain't. And not that I'm trying to voice a certain supremacy of any sort, but when you stand upon the mountaintop and you look over and you can see the promised land, but in the process of you seeing the promised land, you can also see how we've got too many other people that's supposed to be getting there with us. There's too doggone in their head on the drum major instinct, the desire to be first, the desire to lead the parade. And yet here we are on the end of another Black History Month. And it doesn't make as much sense as I said it to a lot of other people who should get it. If they didn't get it last year or any of the years before, we need to start asking people today, how much more have you gotten this year? I know it might sound awkward to you, but just in case it ends up trending again for another month or two or whatnot, coming soon with all of that and COVID too, then this would be the day. This would be the time for us to be a little bit more intuitive. And it doesn't take you having to go out and scream it to all the people who look like idiots, but you whisper and talk it on a casual basis to people that, you don't have to know them to know them. But, there's a lot more people that we think dislike us. They really just want to know how to better get us because we are genetically not them. And they're genetically more like us coming up the rear. That they don't understand. It's not an insult when, Black people say that, man, all of this other doggone white folk stuff make my butt itch. But the reality is that they're in this country with the audacity to speak in any form or fashion about how great they believe they possess, ownership to, without realizing that it was all done off of our butts. And don't let that be the reason why you don't make it to next year, this time, and realize, we're almost out of Black History Month. We better check up and find out what's going on. Y'all good this year? I mean, you remember last year? Remember year before last? Remember year before that? Man, don't ever want to go back. We need to go forward. That's how all of this stuff got there, going forward. We're so forward now that half of us can't get out of our homes and our highways and byways and be the people who travel around the world, who come back and be your boss's boss. Even though you're the biggest boss in town, you're still not the owner because you don't understand international. Because it makes no instinctual sense for you to be very careful and understand the amount of respect you should offer people that you're able to identify as not just some black thing, you know? And the reason why I'm saying that to a lot of people who are not of color is because, unbeknownst to you, there are more people that you are impressed or attracted with of color who secretly are still suffering from an instinct that's so genetically encrusted that they need more help. Not the, oh, what can I do? But the ease up that you would have to understand when you can see them going through. Damn, it's a whole lot of white folk around here. Ain't none of us. What am I do? And not, hey. We're in that era now. It's no longer the ability for us to go, but you know how it is, man. You know how it's always, no, we're past that already. And for that reason, I would guess that it's been about 46 minutes up in here, and I have definitely run out of beer. It's Friday. It's the last week, end of week of what we know to be Black History Month. Matter of fact, this is the last weekend of Black History Month. Full moons are coming, and there's a lot of things out there that are about to force a lot more of a discomfort due to the mere fact that the greatest change is the most uncomfortable of it. There's an old joke that used to say, you know, man, they found the laziest man in the world. He was down in the southern town somewhere, and the Guinness Book of World Records and the Federals and all of this other had to figure out, how is this dude the number one laziest person in the world? They go down and they knock on a door and they say, hey, Mr. So-and-so, are you here? And, nobody was in the house, but they heard a faint little voice coming from around the back. And it's like, so he's like, come around. And they looked around and it's like, the hell does that mean? Come around. Oh, well, I think that means we should walk around the building, walk around the house. Oh, okay, let's try that out. And they walk around, and out in the back in the pasture, there's a little bitty frail man, like a Barney Fife, sitting on this stump out in the back, and he's rocking back and forth, and he's like, Mr. So-and-so, are you so-and-so? Yes, that's me. Ow. And he's going, what's wrong with you? He's like, I'm in pain. And he's like, well, sir, was there anything we can do? We're the federales, this, that, and the other. We want to help you with your pain. Well, how can we help you with your pain? He's like, what's wrong with you? And he said, it's my nuts. And he's like, it's your nuts. What's wrong with your nuts? He said, I'm sitting on them. Now, this is Black History Month, and we just had a whole bunch of nuts sitting on patriots, really honestly give our country too a black eye, and just the mere fact that they out there, and we actually now have to worry about them more than we have to worry about international terrorists, just because, well, these doggone dudes are really offhand. And you're sitting back and you're going, if they had a little dose of Black history, then they could better understand how, well, shit, man, it ain't like we in a better doggone condition. But if you took half of the doggone energy that you took to pronounce how, you really can't stand it no more, and you want to stand up and do something about it and put it into what we doing the same thing too, together with us, we'd all be in a better doggone state right now as Americans. You know, and not that that really sounds like a defeat of any sorts, but you know, it's all in or nothing. And this is that point in time where I have to realize that I could beat a dead horse all night long because I'm a sadist, but that ain't gonna mean that it's gonna change much. And for that reason, I'm gonna sign off and let you do what you do. And I hope that you share, like, subscribe, and even donate, because I hope I got enough for some beer. You good?